All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Here's Johnny.
Vanity. Definitely my favorite sin.
I am the devil, and I am here to do the devil's work.
The power of Christ compels you!
This is my boomstick.
What's your favorite scary movie?
What up, horror heads, and welcome to Shiver, a horror movie podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Daniel DeBona.
And I'm David Ulloa.
And this week, we are going just about as different as you can get from doing Event Horizon last week. If there are two space movies that are more diametrically opposed than these two, I don't know what they are. As this week, we are reviewing the classic 1988 film, Killer Klowns from Outer Space. This is a movie that I feel like is one, kind of divisive in the horror community, believe it or not. And two, really strikes a nostalgia chord with a lot of people. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. I'm gonna throw it to you first, Dave, in a section that we're calling "Come One, Come All." I mean, tell me what you think about Killer Klowns, man. And since it's so, what's your experience with this movie?
My experience with this movie is, I mean, it pretty much is. It goes back to his beginning, my beginnings with horror. I remember loving this movie before I saw it. There was something about it. The design of these clowns just spoke to me. The way it spoke to, I think, just about everyone in our generation. There's a creep factor to them, certainly, as you can see if you're watching live. There's these creepy clowns, right? But there's also a level of camp and humor here that makes it so accessible to everyone, especially kids. And I think that's something that this movie didn't necessarily strive for. I don't know that the Chiodo brothers were marketing this movie to kids, but I do think that they wanted to create a horror movie that everyone could watch and everyone could appreciate, because the scary clown is about as universal a thing as there is in horror. It's the reason why Pennywise is so iconic. It truthfully is the reason why this movie is so iconic, beyond the puppetry, beyond the special effects, which are insanely good and hold up still today. There's something primal about the fear of clowns, and it starts when you're a kid and your parents take you to the circus, because that's what we did, right? We went to the circus when, Barnum and Bailey Circus came in. That's where you were going, and you were afraid of these things. What were they? I don't know, because they didn't talk, and everything they did was funny, but all the humor was rooted in violence. It was banging this guy on the head, and it was squirting this flour in this other guy's face. I mean, it's the reason why the Joker works so well, because he's so dark, and yet he's supposed to be this entertaining figure. So, dude, this is a movie that I've loved for so long. Like I said, I loved it before I saw it, and I'm normally not that guy. I'm normally I'm gonna wait and see, but I didn't have to wait and see with this one.
I have an interesting journey with this movie. So when I was younger, I would occasionally, this would be on,
USA.
USA or something like that. And I would never catch much of it, right? Like I'd always get like bits and pieces. So I knew that Killer Klowns from Outer Space was a thing. So when I was in my late teens, early 20s, when I was really coming into like discovering a lot of horror and getting out of just, like watching whatever I was watching with my parents or whatnot, I went and I bought this on DVD because I was like, oh my God, yes, I've heard so much about this. And so I got it. And this is something that now, sitting here at this exact moment in 2024, is kind of embarrassing for me to admit. When I watched it, I was like, eh. When I watched it for the first time all the way through, I wasn't huge on it. And so I've seen it like one other time since then when like somebody saw I had it and wanted to watch it. And I was still kind of the same way. And so going into this last night, I was one kind of nervous because I know the reputation that this movie has, and I did not want to become that guy who shits on killer clowns. So I was nervous about this episode, but I was also excited because one of the biggest things I've learned, one, getting older, and two, doing this podcast and watching so many different things, but mostly a side effect of getting older, is I don't really give a shit about being that cool anymore, right? Like, I just like what I like. And when I watched last night, I watched this with my 13-year-old son, Ronan, and we had so much fun. And I was laughing and I was enjoying it. And it's brutal in all of its comedy.
Yeah.
I realized that the only reason I'd ever looked at this thing through the eyes of, is because when I watched it the first time, I was in that late teens, early 20s mindset where it's like, oh no, I watch real horror, like
Right.
and it's like, this is stupid. Like the people who shit on Lord of the Rings because they're like, no, there are so many better fantasy authors. It's like, dude, stop it. Just stop. It's okay to like things. It's okay for things to be
Right.
different. And that was where I came in last night. I was like, man, this is really good. Like, I'm enjoying it. It's giving me a moment. My son is creeped. I take it back. My daughter is not easily creeped out, but my two sons are both easily creeped out. So like, I'm constantly looking for things where I can kind of start to plant those seeds. So he heard when we were recording last week, he heard me say, "Oh, were you guys doing Killer Clowns from Outer Space?" And I was like, "Yeah, how have you heard of that?" Which turns out video game for it just dropped this month. And so he'd heard about it from the video game and was really excited to watch it. So not only did I get to view this through fresh eyes with it being, 20 years since I've seen it, but I also got to watch it through the eyes of, I'm not trying to be like this hardcore horror fan who only likes this or only that. I didn't have to check any boxes. Like, I'm allowed to watch it and just enjoy it. And the fact that I'm sitting there laughing, but not laughing at the movie. Like, I'm not laughing at mistakes and things that are so stupid. Like, Hunger and I watched Night Swim a couple weeks ago. We spent that movie laughing, and they were never trying to be funny. It's just a shit movie.
Right.
One that we were watching and we were laughing because they wanted it to be fun and they wanted it to be funny. And I ended up just absolutely adoring this last night. And I get it now. I understand the following that this movie has. I understand why the line for the Chiodos brothers was so long when we were at Spooky Empire. I 100% get all that. And so we've already got some people chiming in, or we've got one person chiming in. Friend of the show, Andrew Harriman, says he's watching this right now, hasn't seen it in 20 plus years. Thanks for the opportunity to make him relive it. He's actually watching that and us simultaneously talk about it. So we appreciate you, Andrew. But it was great.
Andrew's multitasking skills were that good. So he's impressing me right now.
Yeah. So it's just, I ended up really enjoying it. I thought, like I said, it was fun, man. And I then did immediately kind of go online, and I did find out that there are a good number of people who were like, I don't get it. And some people are really chill about it. They're like, it's not for me. And I get that. I do understand if this is not your brand, but some people are just unnecessary about this movie, about how stupid it is, and it's ridiculous that anybody even considers it horror and blah blah blah. And it's like, just enjoy things.
We say this on the show literally every single episode. We never rate a movie against anything but itself,
right?
Because it's unfair to judge a movie for what you wanted it to be versus what it is. And I think that that's the approach that people need to take with this movie. Is this is not a movie that a diehard horror fan is going to come in and watch and expect to get Hostel or X or is something
The
along
Shining.
those lines.
Yeah,
It's not going to be that. And if you're watching this movie with that in mind, the problem is not the movie. The problem is your mindset.
Yeah.
You need to readjust. You need to go into this watching and appreciating the movie for what it is, which is a goofy sci-fi comedy horror.
Yeah. We've got over on Instagram, we've got a friend of the show, former co-host of the show, Neri, chiming in. He commenting on the fact that it's Killer Clowns, both with K's. He says, it isn't enough that they were killers. Did they have to be Klan members too? There he is. Now he's chiming in on Facebook so we can see it. Did they have to be Klan members too? Yeah. Hey, it's all in fun, right? They didn't slip the third K in there, so
they
we're
are a K short. So that's
now it's just a cute.
That'll be a problem for their dealer.
Yeah. KK. So let's get into talking about this actual movie in a section that we're calling the main attraction. I mean, the story of this movie is all over the place. There are parts that are well explained. There are parts that are not explained. There's a lot to this movie, believe it or not. So, Dave, take us through the story here, man.
People are making out at Makeout Point. The movie takes place in the 80s, but you got to think that this is taking place in the 50s, right? So
the top of the world.
Yeah, that's really what this movie is it's a throwback to 50s sci-fi horror. So they see what they think is a comet, an asteroid, something, and multiple people go out to investigate this thing. Not all of them come back. Hilarity ensues from there, right? The interesting thing about this movie, the thing, not the thing, because there's many things, but the big thing that differentiates this movie from those 50 sci-fi horror classics is that the particular sort of idiomatic way that these aliens express themselves is through clown culture, circus culture.
Yeah.
So I love that there's a point in this movie where they're postulating how it is that these are clowns, because they're obviously not clowns, they're space creatures, right?
Yes.
And that moment in the movie is such a real moment in a movie that's pure goofiness. It's such a real thing, like, but why the fuck are they clowns? Right? Like,
yes,
it's very meta. It's spectacular, really. And when you start looking at the way that they wove some sort of mythology in here, how the clowns organize themselves, what it is that they do to hunt people. Sorry, the cat just
it's okay. Out of here, Gadito.
He's now big and strong enough to jump on any surface in the house. So nothing is safe. You are going to see a cat asshole at least once an episode.
Hey, it happens.
Yeah, better his than mine. That's all I'm saying. So
the ultimate question being, which one is less hairy?
Yes.
But we're not going to teach you, the watchers or listeners. Yeah, no, this mythology that you're talking about, I paused the movie to really soak in how awesome that moment was, because there is an entire school of thought that, like, the reason the way angels are depicted in things versus the way they're described in the Bible is so different is because of the idea that maybe our idea of what angels are come from encounters with alien life forms, and that we've then based what we call an angel on these higher beings that we met so long ago as a species. And I was like, just with a real quick, almost throwaway line, they really tapped into a deep sect of mythology there. And I loved that.
Yeah. Well, and then there's hints of a culture, of a killer clown from outer space culture. because the use of popcorn is really interesting in this movie, and the way they incorporate it into the story. It's used as a homing device, right? So that they can track down the people who have escaped. But it also allows for new killer clowns to be bred. Right. And then it seems like there's a sort of like a larval pupa state for these killer clowns before they turn into these gigantic monstrosities. So how these things evolve into what they are, there is so much room for discovery here. And for one reason or another, we've never gotten a sequel.
Right.
We've never gotten a series off of this thing. The closest that we've gotten to anything expanding upon this is the video game that has just come out a couple of days ago.
Yeah, which is less than a month old.
Right. And I know that, I don't know, maybe it was 5 or 6 years ago, this movie kind of took off again.
Yeah,
I started seeing Killer Clown T-shirts, and there were Killer Clown. There was merch in specialty stores and stuff like that.
Yeah, I feel like Spirit Halloween has been part of the resurgence of this because they sell tons of Killer Clowns merch, and so I think that people who haven't even seen the movie are just like, that looks ridiculous and awesome, and they end up with stuff.
Right. So I mean, the time is right. Like this is the time to give us a Killer Clowns 2, because I would love to see more of the clown culture. And maybe that could be the third K.
Killer Clown culture, all with K's, and now we've got a problem.
That we do. So I love that there's hints of mythology here. I love that the story is not centered around this, because in classic sci-fi fashion, if you read any of the classic sci-fi writers, the big three, Asimov, Heinlein, Clarke, these guys don't explain anything.
Right.
They never do. It's just like, oh, well, that's this thing. What does it do?
The world.
This is what it does. How does it do it? Well, don't worry about that. You don't need that. All you need to know is that this thing exists. I love that approach to science fiction. And when you're melding that with the fact that these things are systematically hunting down and killing people, and I'm going to make a weird connection here, in a very life force-like way, trying to transform this world. Are they trying to terraform and create a new killer clown world? I don't know. There's so much that's ambiguous here.
Yeah, because they even discuss that when they're talking about that. They're like, maybe they ran out of resources where they are and they had to come here. And it's like they really did tap into a lot of those sci-fi tropes that always pop up during alien movies. By the way, if you're for the listener here, we've got Andrew. I'm not putting all of your stuff up here, but I do love that you're kind of giving us running commentary as you're watching us. He does point out that Twisted Metal paid homage to it with Sweet Tooth. And he says that apparently Halloween Horror Nights has done Killer Clowns houses a couple of times.
Yeah, I want to say only last year, I think they did a Killer Clown house. I didn't go last year, unfortunately.
So yeah, no, I loved so many things about the story of this movie. I loved that it was goofy and it was fun, but I loved that the violence in this movie is brutal, but not gory. I mean, they are absolutely massacring people in some of the most ridiculous ways possible. At one point, the clown makes a shadow puppet of a dinosaur that eats people.
That might be my favorite way.
It's so great. It's incredible. But then sometimes they do things you're like, oh, here comes some weird clowny violence. And it's just like, nope, those flowers just spray water. They're just regular clown flowers. The guy the one who's just desperately trying to like waylay the kid with his mallet as he stands outside of Big Top Burger and keeps trying to get the kid to come outside. But then like we find out that they have crazy strength. They're bizarrely resilient as long as you don't explode their nose. We find out that they can mimic voices At one point, it convinces the girl to open her bedroom or her apartment door by mimicking her boyfriend's voice. We find out that they like these clowns have an insane power set. We also find out they might not be that smart because for a second, all it takes is an ice cream truck with, a head on it to make them freeze and think that their god just showed up or whatever, right?
Right.
They explore so much of that stuff and they have so much fun with it. We get this great mix of like people who don't believe and people who have seen it. Like Andrew said over here, I mean, how smart is it that their spaceship is a big top? I mean, it's a big top circus tent. It's incredible. Their weaponry, like you said, they're wrapping people in cotton candy. They've got a bazooka that fires popcorn. At one point, we're watching it, and my son goes, "So, are they going to eat these people or do they power the ship?" And literally, like, as soon as he said it, the one big guy comes in and just sticks in the silliest of silly straws into the cocoon and just like starts sipping on the guy. And he was like, "All right, food, got it." I was like, yeah. It seems that they're going to eat them. And so, they're putting people in giant balloons. I mean, just everything about it was just so much fun. But at no point during the movie can you ever be like, this doesn't deserve to be called horror. Hell yeah, it does.
Yeah,
there are plenty of people. Time. Yeah, there are plenty of people who are scared by clowns that aren't trying to be scary, and these are ones that are actively murdering people. It never tries to be hardcore horror or art house horror or elevated horror. It tries to be fun horror, but it never tries to be anything but fun sci-fi horror. And I love that. The story that we got here was just enough. We got characters wondering about their motivations and all that, but no, we didn't dive into it, right? This movie's not about exposition. It's about having fun with it. But the story was enough that it felt cohesive. Like, I was like, okay, they're here. Yep, they're going and they're catching people. Okay, like this is all tracking. Like every single road stop along the way made sense. I never felt like there were any massive jumps in logic here. I never felt like there was ever anything that got too like absurd storyline wise. There were plenty of absurd things in this movie, but when we're looking at just kind of what they presented us with here as the story, I think they gave us exactly what we needed to get out of this, which is, survival horror to an extent, this invasion horror. Like there are so many things that you can kind of tack right onto this and you can enjoy it while also I had tears in my eyes by the end of this movie because we were laughing so much at so many different things. And I loved, and it was just, that was so much fun.
Well, and, to the tears in your eyes laughing until the end of the movie. So many movies from this era, right? The slasher movies, they will use that final stinger to give you that one last jump scare. They kind of turn that on its head here and they give you one last laugh.
Yes.
Because we got that amazing death earlier in the movie, like not that much earlier, where they, they pied the guy until he turned into mush. Right?
So great. So great. Where do they keep all this stuff? They have video game inventories. And it's just like, because it's like we see them all holding one pie and then the dude gets hit with 18. And you're like, yes, bring on the pie.
It never stops. And then he starts to melt.
And then they put the literal cherry on top.
And I love that clown stayed until he knew for sure the cherry was not going to fall.
Yes, like he adjusts it and like stops and looks, just fun.
Realistically, it's like, okay, listen, man, like we only have enough film to do one take, so like make sure that fucking cherry stays, right? Realistically, that's probably what happened. But it's such an awesome character movie because he kind of just sits there and looks at it and he like cocks his head. He goes, huh. And then he walks off.
Yeah.
So, and then we get that final stinger and it's a comedy one. It's not a jump scare where they get pied. At the
Yeah.
very end, it's the last thing that happens, and you cannot get more killer clowns than that. I think that that's the perfect way to end this story. And like you're half expecting um David and what was the other guy's name?
Mike.
Mike. You're half expecting them to fight the whole time.
Yeah.
And they kind of move past that right away.
Yeah.
And this becomes almost a buddy cop movie. And it's like an Odd Couple buddy cop movie. It's really, really great. They found a way of taking so many classic tropes and using them, number one, to their advantage, and then number two, using them against the movie also, so that you're kind of left like, oh wow, I wasn't expecting that to happen.
Yeah,
like you're totally expecting the clown to lure the girl outside of Big Top Burger.
And that's a tense moment, man. When he's just sitting there and she's like up and they pan over to her chair and it's empty. And then you see her like slowly opening the door. And that's when you see he's got the mallet hidden behind his back like a damn Looney Tune. And you're just like you're legitimately worried. It's like, oh God, is this clown going to kill a kid on camera? Like you have that moment. That's one of the things that's amazing about this movie is when they do decide to bring the tension or to bring the horror, they nail it, because the tension of that scene, or man, when he is using the sheriff as a ventriloquist dummy,
that's a great scene.
That scene, like I will put that scene up against a scene from any horror movie as being terrifying. Like that is the scene
that's
where
actually
you're just
that's Art the Clown behavior.
Yes, that's exactly what is. That is art.
Is it
behavior.
Art the Clown behavior, or does it really just go back to Killer Klowns?
Yeah.
And that's I love that scene because the whole time you're thinking like, okay, is there some sort of like mind melding that's happening here? Because there's obviously some sort of like hive mind that they share.
Right.
Because they're able to go after the popcorn.
Yes.
They're able to chase, give chase wherever the popcorn goes. So they obviously have some sort of connection, like, hive mind connection. But it's not until the hand squelches out of the body that you're like, oh my God, he was actually using him as a physical marionette puppet.
Yeah.
Not a psychological marionette puppet. That's an awesome moment.
Yes. Yeah, because that was the thing. Because when it talks with his voice, it's like, oh, he's just sitting on his lap and he's controlling him somehow. Then that hand comes out and it's bloody, and it's like, oh no, he just had him by the spinal cord or something and made him talk. And that's when you're like, that's right. Yes. Horror, but that, but it was that and just some of the gags and stuff in this movie. Like I love when they just start going door to door, truly part of what makes this a time capsule, right? Because now we're all to the point where it's like somebody knocks on the door and they hadn't texted you to say they were on their way. You panic. It's like, oh God, who's here? Like, why is someone at my house? But in the 80s, somebody knocked on your door, you open it and it's the woman in the negligee and they're just holding pizza. And she gets this look in her eye like a porn's about to come to life. And then the little guy like pops out of the pizza box and zaps her. Like just so many of those gags are so and again, much fun.
So tropey because they're playing on that classic porno, right? The guy shows up with the sausage pizza, right? And here you're opening the box and you're expecting dick in a box, right? And it's not, it's clown in the box, but the clown's gonna fuck you. And interestingly, I think that's the first phone call that Mooney gets.
Yeah.
I think that's that first phone call. So somehow she's able to, escape that, or roommate is able to, I don't know what exactly happens there. I don't know what exactly happens throughout most of this movie. I'm just along for the ride. But man, it's fun is the name of the game. And I think if you're watching this and saying, oh well, that part wasn't scary or this other part wasn't scary, you're watching this movie for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, I mean they had so much fun with just everything. I love the design of the inside of this TARDIS-esque circus tent.
It
Right?
is a
This thing seems
TARDIS.
to, yes, this thing is infinitely large on the inside. Like they're covering massive amounts of funhouse style ground inside this thing, including a Sarlacc pit
Yeah.
at one point. An actual just ball pit that wasn't really a trap. It was just a ball pit. But we do find there are female clowns there. And there
Right.
does seem to be something psychic because they seem to immediately know, oh, these guys are into big boobs.
Right.
And so they expand their chests and then don't kill those guys, but apparently give them a time of their life based on the ripped clothes and
Yeah.
lipstick that we see later.
That-
Got some of that.
That's always an odd moment for me.
Got some of that clissy.
Oh, would that could be another K. Click with a K.
Killer clown,
Killer
clown clissy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I'd watch it.
It brings a whole nother meaning to shake that Laffy Taffy. Yeah, I don't know how to feel about that because these things are hideous.
Yeah.
Right. And like these
guys were down bad.
They were, man. They needed a fix, but good.
Like to the fact that it's like the guy's like Mike's like I need you to take me to her house, and they're like, does she have roommates? And like they can't tell that on the spot. He's like, yes, 2 gorgeous roommates with big boobs. And you're like, yeah, and it's like, really, guys? Like that's a special kind of down bad where you can't tell your buddy just 100% made that up.
Yeah.
So we see them. We get and then the kills, shadow puppets, cotton candy guns, popcorn bazookas, all of these things are just ridiculous. And they're exactly what the movie's supposed to be. And that's just all I can keep coming down to is, there was so much of that. It was silly. And that was what we wanted when we watched it. Like I said, I enjoyed sitting there watching this with my son, and he was laughing just as much as me. He was just enjoying every single second of it.
I think a lot of what makes this so enjoyable is that you have a cast of actors that really buy into the story, into what it is that they're doing here. They took the humor seriously, and so as we start moving into cast here, in a section that we are calling Townies versus College Students, Daniel, who kind of like sticks out for you as like, okay, this is someone that like I gotta talk about this person?
Look, he was the antithesis of everyone else in this movie, but I love John Vernon in general. Right, John Vernon is so great whenever you see him in anything. Dirty Harry, the outlaw Josie Wales, like all these things that he's been in, and he always is just super hard ass. I loved him in this movie because he did not buy into any of the bullshit up until the second he was dead. This man went to his grave not buying in. This was all just nonsense and college students drinking wine and he's getting mad that some dude's walking across the street drinking a beer brand beer and yes, cracking open a cold beer brand beer. He's everything pisses him off. He's a no nonsense, like, oh, well, I'm supposed to read you your rights, but you're in my jail and it's just me. He was the exact foil that this movie needed to every other character in the movie. And for him to then have he has one of the most in-depth interactions with the clown, like one individual clown that anybody gets in the entire movie. He gets sprayed in the face, he gets mad, he cuffs him, the hands come off, he grows more, and then he just walks into the tent or into the cell. He gets this great thing, and he never breaks on being hard-ass guy who thinks that this is all just the most ridiculous bullshit he's ever dealt with in his life. He gives tomorrow's my last day vibes, like he definitely seems like that guy who's like, just gotta make it through till I retire next week, And so, but it was so funny to see him bringing his mayor from Dirty Harry character to this particular movie. That's what really cracked me up. It was like in a movie where everything is silly and goofy, he's essentially just still the mayor from Dirty Harry.
Yeah. All right. So here's the thing. For me, this movie's all about Mooney.
Yeah.
It's 100% all about Mooney. So I am not going to talk about any of the stars of this. They definitely carry the movie. They shoulder the burden of like having to tell the story, and they do a great job of it. But for me, it's the little characters that make up this place and their own particular like idioms that it's like
whoop-de goddamn to do.
Like these are not people, they're cartoon characters in the same way that the clowns were cartoon characters, right? Because if this movie had been an animated movie, not much would change at all. So there's one guy that always makes me laugh. Well, everyone makes me laugh, but there's one guy who, the moment I see his face, he makes me laugh. And it's Howard Malpas as Mr. Myers. The moment that he lays eyes on the clown, his face totally changes. And it's like he doesn't want to be impolite because he owns the store and he doesn't want to offend a potential customer. But he also has no idea how to broach the subject with this clear space creature that this is not appropriate behavior in his store.
Right.
It's such a simple yet complex thing that he does here. And it's a bit part. There's no way that you can compare his role to Vernon's role as Mooney. There's no comparison. But this guy makes me laugh every single time. The other guy that is constantly, he's only on screen for like 10 fucking seconds. I laugh every time, just the moment I see his face. David Peel is the security guard who gets pied to death. He's looking at these guys and he's like, I'm going to have to ask you to vacate the premises. His delivery there, I mean, he was giving Jackie Gleason. That's what he was giving there. And it was, man, I love those little bit parts here. The analogy I always go to when we've got a really vivid town filled with like very over the top people is Springfield from The Simpsons. Right. And that's exactly what this place felt like. You had your incompetent police officer, right? You've got your fucking whack jobs that are there, the fucking psychos. Like, how the hell is Mr. Myers still in business? If like there's no toughs going around the city just going through and like knocking over displays. How does he handle that? Like that? Like these people are not real people, and I love that they don't play them as real people. They played them as cartoon characters, and it's why this movie works so well.
Yeah, there's, and you're absolutely right. It's funny because the stars of this movie, serve a functional purpose in keeping the story moving. But you all right over there? Sounded
Yeah,
like something
sorry.
crashed to the ground.
It was Gatico.
Okay. But the stars of this movie keep the story moving. They're obviously the catalyst for everything that keeps going. But yeah, it's lady in negligee who's expecting porn pizza, that keeps this movie going. It's all of those people you talked about. That is what's so great about this. And I'm not taking anything away from the performances of the main stars, but they were merely functional. They weren't flavor.
Right.
They were there because they held the whole thing together, right? It's the reason you use eggs when you're cooking something. They were a binder.
Yeah.
But all of the flavor of this movie came from all of those little characters. God, man, that security guard scene. And I know that I know this is the third time we've gone back to it, but it's like they show him and he's got his flashlight, and they show one getting out, and they show him and he's like, weird, a clown, and then another one, he's like, okay, there's two, and then it's like 3, 4, and then it just keeps cutting back to him, and he's just slowly getting more and more weirded out. That shit right there, like the time they took to make that scene. And for a scene that was that ridiculous to play out for as long as it did, and for him to carry that scene in all of its absurdity was fantastic. Yeah, the guy in the convenience store, spectacular. I really did. That was the type of stuff that I looked for and enjoyed this time through, was all those little things that make this movie what it is. And yeah, sure, your mains, your Dave, your Mike, your Debbie, yeah, they were fine. They were great. They didn't, you're waiting for, you're wondering for a will they, won't they, some sort of love triangle thing. They never really leaned into that. So those three gave us, what we needed from them. Like, I loved that Mike Tobacco, by the way, is what he's listed as in the credits.
They never say his last name throughout the entire movie. I always, every time I watch this movie, I see the name scroll up and I'm like, who's Mike Tobacco?
But I love that he doesn't give up on his clearly idiot friends, who, by the way, while we're talking, like flavor characters, his dumb friends, the Terenzi brothers, Paul and Rich, they were so funny. Like, the idea of, let's make some money in our ice cream truck by taking it to Makeout Point and making a bunch of sex jokes. One, I love that. That's an entrepreneurial spirit. That's what we need, right? 2, it's the dumbest fucking thing you could ever do with an ice cream truck. It's like, hey, I know you're about to get in her pants, but like, don't you want a snow cone first? No. But I love both aspects of it. I love that they had this idea and followed through on it, and I love how stupid it is. And those two were so funny in everything, because they were your tropey horror 80s movie idiots, and they were so perfect in it. But what else are they? They're the goddamn heroes. They're the ones who bust in and save the day in the ice cream truck. They check off Gundus with that ice cream truck. They were exactly what we needed out to compare to Mike and Dave and Debbie. We needed the Terenzi brothers, and I love that Mike never gave up on them. They've crashed their truck, they're reluctant to help, so he lies about the roommates, then he drags them along. I love that when they're at one point in the spaceship, they're all trying to like be super quiet and creep through what is, just a ridiculous stage. It's just like a big triangle in the front and some steps that seem pointless. Yeah. And like everybody's like creeping down them and like trying to stay low in the fog. And then they're like, hey, watch this. And all they do is hop down 2 stairs. Like, they don't even it's something that your 4-year-old would do. It's like, it's like, hey, watch this. And you turn around and they just hop from one step to the next step. And it's like, thank you.
Hey, look what I can do. Look what I can do.
Those two guys seem to have as much, if not more fun than everyone else making this movie. So I loved them.
Yeah, absolutely. The only characters we didn't talk about are the actual clowns, right? So in a section that we've done the same every single month, that we're calling Space Monster, the festive kind. Daniel, tell us about the clowns, man.
These clowns are what I imagine people who, I think it's called chlorophobia, people who are afraid of afraid of clowns. These clowns are what I imagine all clowns look like to people with that phobia.
Yeah.
They are, because they're obviously clowns, right? There's no ifs, ands, or buts. They're definitely clowns, but they're grotesque. They are.
That's the exact word that I have in my mind, is grotesque.
Yes, they are absolutely the way that if you're having a nightmare about a clown, that their faces melt and you can see every single wrinkle and just everything about them is horrifying. There is an aspect to this movie, for as goofy as we've talked about everything being with the weapons and the kills, there's something about the idea of something that looks like one of these guys killing you in such a comedic way that is actually more horrifying than, just a Leatherface chopping you up with a chainsaw. Leatherface looks like he should chop you up with a chainsaw. These guys don't look like they should be goofy. Right, they don't look like they're, they look like their weapons should be like serious, and it catches you off guard. And so, like, to die in such a ridiculous way while being faced with such a just horribly ugly monster is ridiculous, but it's also way scarier because, again, it plays into that nightmare aspect of it. Like, if you're afraid of clowns, and so your basis is circus stuff, you're going to picture them as these grotesque figures, but everything they do to you is going to be circus related. Everything they do here is perfectly a nightmare come to life, and they're amazing space monsters.
I have to agree, man. Like their proportions, generally speaking, doesn't matter how close they are to the camera lens, they're distorted.
Yeah.
And they look like monsters. So their heads are all out of shape, their bodies are all out of shape. This is the exact way that we as children see them. And they're all of them are bigger on the bottom than they are on the top.
Yeah.
Giving us that like perspective of a child looking up at a clown. So like even the way that they are designed gives us as the viewer the idea that we're looking up at these things. The other thing that from a filmmaking perspective, what they do a lot is the movie generally is shot with like wider angle lenses until the clowns are on screen, and then unless it's like you really need a wide angle lens to tell the story that's in front of you, they use much more narrower fields of view. And what that does is it allows the clown to fill up more of the space.
Right.
Because there's so many scenes where you're looking at the screen and it's half clown.
Yeah.
And it's like, what the fuck is this? Like, it consumes the entire television screen. And TV screens are rather large today.
Yeah.
You know, like, you don't even have to spend a lot of money to get a big one. Like, that's scary to see something that big on your screen. Like, if you're watching us right now, there's 3 of these fucking things looking. They've been looking at me with their cracked out eyes this entire time, and it's a little creepy. It's a little unsettling. You know, I've paid a couple of crackheads to watch my car while my punk band played in some, not so great neighborhoods to make sure that no one broke into my car where I had all of my music gear while we were playing. They looked a lot like these guys.
It's strikingly similar. Yeah.
Don't do drugs, kids. All right, because this is what you end up looking like. It's scary. It's very scary. And then what you're talking about, the comedic angle of it, it's very, even though it's the other way around, it is very Terrifier-esque, where like art is getting so much enjoyment out of treating this as a joke that we as the audience like are kind of forced with, okay, I'm either laughing with him or I am cowering at him. Like it's one or the other. You're either along for the ride or you're not. Don't sit here and say like, but he's fucking flying. But bullets are bouncing off his chest. But he's got lasers coming out. You went to a fucking Superman movie. You decided, right? Go along for the ride. Don't sit here and be like, no, I mean, it's ridiculous. Of course it's ridiculous, but we're here for it.
Yeah.
It is rather terrifying what these guys do, how they do it, the level of enjoyment that they get of it. It is sinister. These guys really truly earn their moniker as killer clowns. They're not playing around. And what do they do with the rest of the bodies once they've gone into the cocoon? Like, we know they drink their blood, but are they using it as fuel? Because like the bodies are kind of staying there, or is it really just a place when you cure meat?
That's
right?
exactly what my son said. My son said this is the clown version of jerkying them. That's exactly what he said. Like, they're turning them into jerky so they last longer.
It could be that, but then we also see that there's different pods that they hold people in.
Right.
There's those there's the cocoons, there's the cotton candy cocoons, but then there's that, like, the thing that looks like the what was that Carpenter movie, Dark Star? It looks like the Dark Star monster, right? That they put Debbie in later in the movie. What is that thing for? And why don't they want to drink her blood right away? Are they trying to lure more people in? Like, I think that these things are a little smarter than people tend to give them credit for. And also the fact that they show up, because I'm looking at it right now, and I didn't realize, I don't know how many times I've seen this movie, I've never realized this. The pizza box says Amici. It's friend in Italian. They show up with a pizza box that says friend.
Yeah.
Like, everything about them is a gag, and I love them for it.
Yeah. And it's funny you reference Superman, because one other thing about them is these clowns are nigh indestructible. We see them take a beating and keep going. Which, at one point we actually see Dave actually shoots one, which, by the way, this cracked me up to the point that I rewound it last night to double check it. He fires 3 shots and there end up being 5 bullet holes in that clown. Including when he fires the first one, there's immediately 2. But we've talked about this before, this idea of, like from King of the Hill, right? Wabi Sabi, right? It's the imperfections that make it beautiful. This is the type of movie where we can look at those things and enjoy that. But so we see one get shot multiple times. We see one just remove his hands and grow new ones. Yeah. And it's like it's hilarious that it's like, oh, well, that one big red thing that you can see from a mile away, that's their weak spot. Yes, that's hilarious. But also, that's a tougher shot than bodying up one of these fat bottom clowns, right? You know, like center mass on the clowns from this movie is not a hard shot. I've only fired a gun a couple times in my life. I'm guessing I'm going 4 for 5 trying to put rounds in one of these things if I'm aiming for center mass. But it wouldn't matter, because you can apparently just decimate these things as long as you don't destroy their nose. Mm-hmm. And so they're scary in that aspect too, where it's like, okay, so you have to be a really good shot to to take one out, so all of that stuff is great. And we don't have a banner for it, but I just realized something that we definitely need to talk about with this movie, because this movie, the Chiodos brothers have, they're legends because of this movie, and rightfully so, because there are a lot of great production ideas that come to life in this movie. So let's take a minute to talk about some of the production stuff. Some of you've talked about some of the camera angles and some things like that, but some of the other things that just made it fun and a great time to watch.
For me, I talked about the clown designs, right? But the tech that's inside, like the animatronics that are in these clown heads, is insane. And I mentioned at the top of the show that this movie still holds up. This is one of the things you and I have said this constantly, going back to the very first episode. Whenever you do practical special effects, it's always going to age better than CGI. Because even the best damn CGI that we've got today, I guarantee you in 5 years, you turn around and you look at it and you're like,
right.
I wish they would have done this a little differently. And that to me is why practical special effects will always look better. Because even if you're looking at something like stop motion, which very clearly is stop motion, your brain is already looking at it and it's like, some guy fucking did that.
Yeah.
Some guy created that shit, right? And I know that there is someone behind a computer that's an artist who's creating that CGI. But in our brain, these things don't equate to the same thing.
Right.
It's just like I'm a sucker. People make fun of me all the time, but I am a sucker for vinyl. I fucking love vinyl. All right. Now it's got to be an original pressing of that vinyl, because it's got to be mastered for vinyl.
Right.
And you've got to have decent speakers, because if you don't, then there's no point. But yeah, I'm that fucking guy. I'm going to tell you, it does sound warmer. It does sound better. And fuck you if you disagree, because you're wrong. Scientifically, you're wrong. It does sound different. Okay?
You still watching, Neri?
And it's the same thing with film. We talk about this all the time. When we talked about the Innkeepers, why did it look so good? Well, the thing was fucking shot on film. Film looks better than digital. It always does. And animatronics, hardcore, in front of the camera, special effects, that shit's going to look better than anything else. And this still looks, if they were to do this today, and they were to decide, we are going to do this for real, it's going to be puppetry, we're going to do the whole thing, we're going to do it old school, I don't think that they could come up with better than what we got in this movie now.
The best that they could hope for to recreate it.
Yeah, that's why this thing will, I don't think, ever be remade.
Yeah, I mean this movie, like it's such a noticeable difference that even my son, who does not listen to this podcast, who does not know our opinions of practical versus CGI, he even said this looks so cool because that is really there. Like he even said that. And I mean, and the combination of animatronics and makeup on these clowns is so wild. If you're watching us now, you can look up at the top there. I mean, you can see every single wrinkle in these things. You can see, I mean, the makeup is crisp and clean, where it's supposed to be. This is really, I mean, this is, and it predates it by five or 6 years. Jurassic Park's 93, 94, right?
93, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, predates Jurassic Park by 5 years, but this is Jurassic Park level animatronics in a movie that didn't have a fraction of that budget or Steven Spielberg. Right. The animatronics and makeup that we got here are it's just incredible, and all the little movements, the mouth moving perfectly, the eyes kind of cutting around, the fact that through all of that you can tell those are, like, for some of them it's like, oh, those are actually like human eyes kind of buried underneath all of that stuff. Amazing. I love the choice to go as classic clown as possible. So you've got the giant shoes and the stripes and the stuff like that. Also,
and they leave shoe prints.
The shoe prints. That's exactly what I was about to say. And not only do they, but they're like on the walls and the ceiling. And it's like, well, I haven't seen them do that, but obviously they can if their shoe prints are on the wall, you know? Again, just building that mythology.
Yeah.
All that stuff is great. I love, as much as I love the animatronics, I love how the quality of how good those animatronics are is so starkly contrasted by how low budget the inside of most of the tent is, with just black backdrop, so you don't know exactly what's back there. Like they come out of that one door, and it's just like the funhouse shifting doors that, honest to God, from looking at it right there, you could just walk. Yeah, you could just walk around the side of and not have to deal with them. You know, like they start opening all the doors that are getting smaller and smaller. Like I said, the stairs just with a doorway that's just kind of in the middle of a wall with the giant triangle. The inside of this thing felt like, I referenced the TARDIS earlier. This feels like watching old school Doctor Who, like pre-David Tennant Doctor Who. This is the type
like
of
Tom Baker days.
Yes, this is Tom Baker Doctor Who special effects. And I mean, it just there were just parts, there were nostalgic parts of me flaring up that I haven't seen, and so that I haven't noticed in so long, because that stuff was so great. Like when they were in the ship, a lot of times it felt like a stage production. When they go
like
to
black box theater.
Yes, like they go to open the elevator door, and I could just picture somebody standing behind that thing spinning it, and then they get inside and they spin it back the other way. The inside of the tent, yes, felt like black box theater. And that was amazing. I loved the feeling of that. I loved, we were talking about the Terenzi brothers earlier. I love that this giant red button has been in the background for a solid 8 minutes. And you're like, man, somebody's going to push that. Somebody's going to push the giant candy apple red button. And then it finally gets pushed. You know, just so much of that stuff was it. Man. And we talked earlier about the security guard scene, how long they just let that scene ride, and they just let it keep going, and more clowns got out, and they cut to him. These guys, when they're sitting there watching dailies and stuff, they knew exactly what they wanted this movie to look like. And I can only assume that you were right, you know, when you were at the top and you're like, look, we got one take. You know, this movie was made for 1.8 billion. Million, 1.8 million.
Yeah.
Yes, 1.8 million. Which, as we say all the time, not a lot in movie terms. And so they were doing this on a tight budget, which a lot of that had to go into the special effects for the clowns. And it looked like a lot of the stuff was rotoscoped. Like when they see the power source for the tent, and it's like it looks like something out of Heavy Metal, almost like they're obviously people standing there on a set, but the actual power source looks like it's ripped straight out of Heavy Metal.
That's an old school film technique, which again, this is how you save money, because you go back to the way that things have been done for ages and ages, and you're like, okay, we're not going to reinvent the wheel, we're not going to create some sort of, you know, high tech way of doing this. Let's do it the way they did it back in the day, and it was called matte paintings. And so literally someone on a glass that was gigantic would paint exactly what was going to be without actors, right? So this is going to be like the backdrop, as it were. And then they would leave a section that was unpainted, and then what you filmed was then using rear projection projected onto that glass. And then what you actually filmed, what you're seeing, is the glass being filmed with the film that was actually made with the actors rear projected onto that. It's classic. It's old school. You've seen countless movies with this.
Yeah, I mean, it felt
around the same time.
Familiar.
Indiana Jones, right? Temple of Doom, when they're coming out from the side of the mountain, that they've just had that whole chase through the minecart section, right? They come out, and then all this water comes rushing out, and you've got this beautiful, beautiful backdrop. That's not real. That was painted,
Right.
you know, that was painted, because it would be impossible to get that shot. It's impossible. Your actors would more than likely risk life and limb for that. No one's going to sign up for that. No one has insurance for that, right? So how do you do that? That's how you do that. So like it's such an amazing thing, and it adds to the classic sci-fi-ness of this movie, because that is a direct callback to The Forbidden Planet, which I think is one of the greatest sci-fi movies of all time. There's a scene where Leslie Nielsen, playing it straight, not humorous at all, walks into the power section of this base, and it looks just like that. I mean, the colors are different, you know,
Right.
things are a little different, but it's like that's ripped right out of there. The Chiodo brothers knew what they were doing. They didn't reinvent the wheel. They just said, put smaller wheels on it and make the whole thing smaller, so that when they all pop out, it's really funny.
Yeah. And so, you know, just all that stuff was so great. Also, I would like to make this episode my official petition for movie theaters to start selling duffel bags of popcorn,
Yes.
like the clowns carry around, because I need that much popcorn. I'm a done with my popcorn through the trailers kind of guy, so I could use the duffel bag of popcorn. I think that that's an underused popcorn delivery vessel is the duffel bag. So I would like to see that happen.
I think that someone is trying to keep us from having the duffel-sized popcorn bucket. It's got to come from the top. It's a conspiracy, because
You got to be right.
you know how many calories popcorn are?
Before you add butter, not many, but movie theater popcorn is
not
a lot.
many at all. In fact, the good people at Jenny Craig will tell you it's not even 1 point.
Right. Yeah.
And I am not sponsored by Jenny Craig at all. I just remember that because my mom was on Jenny Craig for a while, and popcorn was 0 points.
You eat a lot of no butter at I've done when I lost a lot of weight the first time I did Weight Watchers, and you eat a lot of no butter added popcorn because it's like a big bag of like 2 points. Yeah.
I was gonna say, you know, my wife did that and dropped a lot of weight, and she basically snacked on popcorn with no butter. Copious amounts of salt. So I'm like, dude, you're clogging up your arteries. Like you're the trade-off is not there. But like that's the whole thing, is like it's a vegetable. It's a heated up vegetable. Why can't we get a duffel bag size? I'm not talking about like an oversized LL Bean, you know, waxed canvas duffel bag size large.
Right.
I'm just saying, like, give me a regular duffel.
Yeah,
I can take it down.
Yeah, exactly. Just give me I'm on my way to practice size duffel. That's all I'm looking for. Right? So, well, I mean, I think we've hit it all. So I think it is about time where we get into the rating of this movie. Now, I'm sure everybody listening and watching knows, but in case you don't, we said it at the top and we'll say it again. Here at Shiver, we never rate a movie against other movies. We only rate a movie for what it intended to give us, what it actually gave us, and how this particular movie made us feel. So in order to do that effectively, we don't use stars. We create a unique rating system for every single movie that we do. And really, there's only one choice to do when it comes to Killer Clowns from Outer Space. So Dave, out of a possible 5 cotton candy cocoons, all spelled with C's, what do you give Killer Clowns from Outer Space?
Man, this movie's a 5 for me, man. You know, it's number one, it's a classic. It's one that I constantly want to watch. It's one that my son every now and then asks to watch with me too, because he saw it a couple years ago, and he was like, "Where has this been on my life?" I'm like, "Kid, you've been alive for only a handful of years. Relax." but it spoke to him in such a way. So there's an emotional thing that I have with this movie. But then on top of that, like, it's just a great movie. This is the kind of movie that if you want to watch a horror movie, you can put it on. If you want to watch a comedy, you can put it on. If you want to watch a sci-fi movie, you can put it on. It's also great for, and go with me here, when you don't need to watch a movie.
Yeah.
I have this thing where it's like if I'm in cleaning mode and I'm doing mopping and I'm sweep before the mop, obviously, but I'm a fucking idiot and I said it backwards. And then you're doing dishes and you're like, okay, you know what? Let's just fucking spring clean the fuck out of this house. There's a couple of movies that I'd love to put on and just have in the background because I can watch it, I cannot watch it, I can hear it and know where it is in the movie, right? So these are movies that you know fairly well and you don't really need to follow. Back to the Future is one of these. Indiana Jones is another one of these. Star Wars. Killer Klowns is one of these movies for me. I can put this on literally at any point in time. And whoever is with me is going to be okay. No one's going to be offended. No one's going to be like, bro, can you fucking take this off, man? I'm eating. No one's going to say that.
Yeah, it's that same quality that I look for in a movie that you play during a Halloween party, just so you've got a horror movie on the TV while everybody's hanging out. You put this one on, you don't need to follow the story to understand it because you're not missing any exposition about, why they're there or anything like that. You can just throw it on, people can be partying. You don't even have to have the volume on. People just look up occasionally, they catch a gag, they see something ridiculous. Man, this movie, like I said, I was worried going into this episode that this was going to be one that was going to start to drive a wedge because I remember just thinking it was but no, this movie is fantastic and it is 100% 5 cotton candy cocoons for me. I enjoyed all elements of this. I loved how it held up. I loved how it was nostalgic. I loved that I got to watch it with my son, who also enjoyed it just that much. So it became something that we did together. There was not a thing about this movie that I didn't love, and we go to the thing. Is it a perfect movie? No, but it's not supposed to be. That's the other thing about this, right? They weren't the Chiodos brothers weren't striving for perfection here. They were striving for everything they gave us here, and they 100% delivered on all of that stuff. And I thought it was spectacular. So yeah, I'm gonna sit right there at 5 cotton candy cocoons as well.
Spectacular. So there you have it. 5. This is a perfect horror movie. So for all you naysayers, just know you're wrong.
Yeah, just have some fun with it, or at least like a fan of the show. He's been on, Greg. He doesn't badmouth this movie. He just says like, yeah, I don't get it. Cool. So it's not for everybody, and that's fine. But
of course,
but don't be the type of person who shits on this movie because there's absolutely no reason to do that.
None at all.
So, thank you guys for listening so much. This is wrapping up Space Horror, Space Monster Month. This one, I think that to this point, this one has run because of the fact that we weren't, limited to like one particular monster. I think that we squeezed all the juice out of this one when it comes to like types
this
of
was a
movies.
Really versatile group.
Because we got super artsy with High Life. We got really gruesome with Event Horizon. We had a lot of fun with this one. I mean, we really definitely got everything. Oh, and super weird with Life Force. I mean, we checked a lot of boxes on Space Horror Month. So
yes, we did.
Thank you guys for sticking around for all of that. A couple of notes about the future here. We are going to be taking next week off, as our recording day will be right before the 4th. We're going to spend some time with our families. But when we come back, we will be starting July and a new monster of the month. And we are going to be doing, originally suggested to us by friend of the show, Michael Hunger, as abnormally tall things. We are modifying that a little bit, and we are going to be doing Kaiju Month. So we're going from bizarre space creatures to just giant fucking monsters. So we've got a couple of ideas of what we're going to do. I'm going to have some guest hosts with me while Dave takes care of some of his summer traveling, but we're only taking 1 week off. So make sure you check us, make sure you check us out, stay with us through that 1 week off. If you're wondering where you can find us and you're listening right now, you can head to shiverpod.com where you will get links to all of our social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. All of those things at ShiverPod. Instagram is our most active one, but you can always watch us live on the others. And actually, we do run live on Instagram now. It's a little bit different than watching it on YouTube or Facebook, but we are live on Instagram as well now. So make sure you check us out in all of those places. We love all the feedback. Been posting we've gotten some really fun comments about some of our Instagram posts and stuff here recently. So thank you to everybody who
stepped up your game.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying.
Yeah.
It's summer break, right? I got the time, so I'm trying to enjoy it. So thank you to everybody who takes the time to share those things and like those things and get us out there. We appreciate and love each and every one of y'all.
Absolutely. So on behalf of all of us here at Shiver, fright you very much.